Creating positive change in our communities requires strong leadership, insights from multiple perspectives, and balanced discussions about real issues. You're about to hear from Tracy Kasper, candidate for the 2022 First Vice President for the National Association of Realtors. You'll hear how advocacy, inclusion, and members will serve as the foundational elements of a bright future. This is Real Talk with Tracy.
Welcome to this episode of Real Talk with Tracy. As many of you know, the pillars of my campaign are AIM. They're advocacy, inclusion, and our members. We've talked about advocacy in our earlier episodes and how important it is for our association and for our communities. And today we're going to talk about inclusion. We have so many stakeholders in our association, from our multicultural groups to our property manager members to our commercial practitioners. And today I wanted to talk to two of our Appraiser Realtor members and get their perspective on what's happening in our industry today. So with that, Frank, if you don't mind, please introduce yourself.
Good morning. My name is Frank Gregoire. I'm a state certified residential appraiser. I work in St. Petersburg, Florida. I've been a real estate broker since 1977. That's also when I started my real estate appraisal career. I'm active with my local association of realtors, the Pinellas Realtor Organization, the Florida Realtors, and also the National Association of Realtors. I've been a member of the board of directors at NAR for right around 20 years. I have chaired NAR's appraisal committee, and this in 2021, I'm vice chairman of the Real Property Valuation Committee. And I also am NAR's representative on the Appraisal Foundation Board of Trustees.
My name is Michelle Chikalski Bradley. I am from the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area. I am a very proud third generation realtor with 35 years experience. I don't know where the time goes. I am a real estate educator. I have my own real estate appraisal school. I write and produce my own curriculum. I'm a member of the Appraisal Standards Board of the Appraisal Foundation. The Appraisal Standards Board writes and interprets the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice to which all appraisers must adhere. These are the national competency and ethical standards. I've served on several committees within NAR and recently have chaired the Real Property Valuation Committee. NAR is a sponsoring organization of the Appraisal Foundation, and NAR always has a voice. So thank you for inviting me. Good morning.
Oh, good morning, and thank you. Thank you both for being here today. Obviously, we have the cream of the crop. We have the best of the best joining us today, and I've asked them to be here because there's important conversations that are happening in our industry. And part of that is the fact that in my campaign, we've been talking about inclusion, and inclusion includes all of the stakeholders of our association, and our appraiser members are a big, big part of that. So having both of you here to be able to talk to that conversation and help our members understand exactly who our other members are and who all of our stakeholders are that need to be at the table. And you both have been at the table for a long time, so thank you both for everything that you do. So let's go ahead and dive into some of our questions. So one of the things that I did want to bring out today in our conversation is the fact that our appraiser members are a big part of our association. And you both being so involved as you both are, could you just speak to just some of those small pieces that you guys are working on right now with NAR to help our realtor and our appraiser members? And Michelle, do you mind if I ask you to talk first?
Yes, absolutely. One of the things that I'd really love to point out that NAR has recently done is, and this is available in the Realtor store, there is a frequently asked question brochure that talks about the appraisal process, the residential appraisal process, so agents can understand the most frequently asked questions. Folks, this is a free download that NAR gives to you, and it's available right online for you.
The easiest way to get to the valuation related information that is provided by the Real Property Valuation Committee is to go to nar.realtor/appraisal. And in addition to the frequently asked questions for agents, there's also a guide to understanding a residential appraisal there. And that's just a portion of what the Real Property Valuation Committee has been involved in. And I think another very important aspect is the Real Property Valuation Committee. It is kind of like a microcosm of the National Association of Realtors. They're involved in education, but they're also involved, they're part of the public policy team at NAR. And the Real Property Valuation Committee reports to the Public Policy Coordinating Committee. Several years ago, in conjunction with other committees, including Professional Standards Committee and other public policy, the Real Property Valuation Committee put forth the responsible valuation policy. And that responsible valuation policy went through public policy coordinating, the executive committee, and was ultimately adopted by the NAR Board of Directors. And that is a guidance document for not only NAR members, but also the NAR public policy team when they are responding to congressional inquiries and also proposed rules by federal agencies.
And I appreciate you bringing that up because a big part of everything that we do is that advocacy piece. So Frank, thank you for tying that all in. It's so interesting to see how every part of our association has influence on those government officials and those policymakers. So thank you for that, because I'm going to guess, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but the CFPB would be a big part of those policymakers that, of course, we have good conversations with to make sure that they are aligning with what helps us to be able to help our consumers. Would that be correct?
Correct. But in addition to the CFPB, you have the Federal Reserve. You also have the Federal Housing Finance Agency. There's a lot of conversations that are going on right now about modernizing appraisal. Fannie Mae and Ginnie Mae have a request for information that's been proposed, and the Real Property Valuation Committee is helping to develop NAR's response to that request for information.
Well, thank you for that, because those are so important. Those are big conversations that are happening, and having our realtor members and having you as our realtor members, especially where you have that expertise from the appraisal world, thank you for having that influence, because this is where we have congressional members and policymakers that don't do what we do every day, and they need your expertise. So thank you both for doing that. So our next question that I have is the fact that in our industry, I believe there's a lot of terminology around what it is that the appraiser is coming up with. We've heard opinion of value, we've heard intrinsic value, we've heard market value. Frank, help us out.
Okay, well, we are looking for market value, but the thing is that terminology and precise terminology is extremely important to appraisers. Appraisers that are doing work for mortgage lenders are constrained, or they're required to adhere to a definition of market value that has been adopted by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. In fact, the same definition of market value, pretty much the same, has been adopted by all the federal banking agencies in their interagency appraisal and evaluation guidelines. The definition of market value is included in every single Fannie Mae appraisal report, and that is what the appraiser opines to. And the problem is that people just say, well, it's just an opinion. Well, it is an opinion that is developed according to an extremely detailed and strict process, and the opinion must be credible. That's the way that an appraisal is judged. It's not judged on accuracy, it's judged on credibility. Credibility, and Michelle will correct me on this, but credibility, it means that it's worthy of belief. And it's also supported by evidence and logic. So it's the appraiser's opinion of market value is more than just an opinion. It has to be, and it's required to be, a credible opinion and supported by evidence of logic. And I'm going to contrast that with price, contract price, and we can say intrinsic value. Price, or an asking price, that's a matter of fact. That's what the seller and the agent agree to list the property for. Contract price is a fact. That is something that the buyer and the seller have agreed to. But let's face it, that contract price, we all know from the events over the last decade, the contract price can be affected by a number of things. One of them might be that the buyer grew up in that house, or the buyer's relatives live next door, or they've always gone by that house and they've loved that house and it has intrinsic value to them. That's fine, but not always does that intrinsic value or agreed upon price translate to market value, which is what the property is worth to the broad market, not to an individual or a family.
Michelle, could you piggyback on that?
Absolutely. You know, Frank hit the nail on the head, and I don't need to correct you, Frank, because you were exactly right on the credibility. So, price is a fact, value is an opinion. I like to give this example when I teach classes. Pick your favorite car, your most expensive car. I don't know, BMW, the highest series, 7 Series, whatever it is. Look at the sticker price. When you drive that brand new car off the lot, what happens to the value? Is the value something different than what you just paid on the sticker price? And very often in classes, I hear, yes, it's different once you drive that brand new car off the lot. Now we have a difference between price and value. Price is the amount asked, paid, offered for the property. And price and value may not necessarily be the same. When we develop an opinion for market value, that's what the market would be willing to value that particular property at. And when we look at market value, the definition includes an open and competitive market, knowledgeable buyers that are not affected by any undue stimulus, typical motivation, and reasonable exposure on that open market. Terms equivalent to cash. So we have a specific role as an appraiser. And I'd like to impress upon the appraiser is the only individual in this transaction who is independent, impartial, unbiased. Everyone else in the transaction is going to get something, if you will. The buyer hopefully will get the house. The seller will hopefully get the cash. The mortgage company will get their recurring monthly payments. The real estate agents hopefully will get their commission that they worked extremely hard for. But the appraiser has a role completely independent, impartial, unbiased. They have a firewall around them, if you will. They're coming in, they're doing an analysis of the market conditions and an analysis of that particular home, and they're walking away. We have no tie to any part of the transaction.
So Michelle, thank you for that, because that actually segues perfectly into my next question for you. And that is, I think that there's a misnomer, I know, in our industry. And that is the fact that realtors, the agents, cannot talk to our appraiser realtor peers. So is it true that an agent cannot talk to the appraiser?
Folks, agents and appraisers can talk. In fact, lenders and appraisers can talk. The legislation, the Dodd-Frank financial reform legislation, has prohibitions about what can be discussed and how it may be discussed. For example, the Dodd-Frank Act prohibits coercion, intimidation, bribery, extortion, any kind of intimidation that would cause any factor against the appraiser. In other words, you can't cause the appraised value to be based on a factor other than the independent judgment of the appraiser. So there's nothing wrong with calling an appraiser and asking a question, or whether you're the agent or the lender. However, the appraiser is bound by the uniform standards of professional appraisal practice, which have very specific confidentiality requirements. So the appraiser may not always be able to answer the question posed by the agent or the lender. Well, the lender, yes, but by the agent, no. If the agent asks the appraiser, what comps are you using in the appraisal? What was the value opinion in that appraisal? The appraiser is not going to be able to answer those types of questions. But there's no problem with an agent calling up an appraiser and saying, what time are you coming to the appointment? I'd like to meet you and provide an appraisal packet to you. So there's nothing wrong with that open dialogue from the agent to the appraiser.
I believe agent communication with the appraiser is essential. I know that when I was doing mortgage-related work, communication with either the listing agent or the selling agent, communication with agents that had similar properties listed for sale or recently sold was absolutely essential to me. And that it was very important for me to maintain a relationship with agents active in an area because they're much closer to the market than I could ever hope to be. They had an opportunity usually to look at the comparable sales from the inside and the outside, where all I've had an opportunity to do is to take a look at the exterior and photographs from the MLS. And very often an agent is privy to components of the sale, aspects of the sale, the motivations of the buyer and the seller, which don't make it to the public record. They don't make it into the MLS. And that kind of conversation, that kind of communication is absolutely essential. Now, an agent has to be careful that they don't coerce, they don't attempt to influence the appraiser to base his opinion on anything other than his independent judgment. However, it is essential that agents communicate with appraisers, and I think it's essential that appraisers communicate with agents and seek their information.
And I always encourage agents to meet the appraiser at the appointment, at the listing, and share an appraiser packet. And here's the little secret that I like to give to agents everywhere. When you meet that appraiser, folks, the appraiser already has the sales that are in the multi-list. The appraiser already has the contract and the deed and often the survey. What the appraiser is looking for is specific information that you as an agent can provide relative to those comparables. In other words, take that multi-list data sheet and get your pen out and write down exactly why that particular sale is a comparable for the subject. It was built by the same builder at the same time. It's in the same school district. It's in the same development. The parties were typically motivated. Or even better, take those sales that you know are not an arm's length transaction. In other words, you know that sale sold for a different amount than it probably should have. Maybe it was a divorce, maybe it was an estate, maybe it was a situation where the property was in far below average condition for the area. Provide that factual information to the appraiser and help aid that flow of communication and information.
And I appreciate that. And if it's okay, I might tag on to the end of that as well from an agent's perspective, which is when you get a call, when I get those calls from appraisers asking me to verify sales. So just taking that extra minute to have that conversation with them because they are calling to find out what do they not know. And I totally appreciate that in my appraisers. So when I get and I usually log them in so I can tell it's an appraiser because I'll take that call. I want to help them. It takes 3 seconds to be able to answer a quick question, give them a little information, and help them be able to do the report they need to do. Because our market is changing so fast, and I'm sure not just in my area. And so if we can give good, relevant, recent information to that appraiser, when they call to just verify a sale, don't just tell them, hey, it's in the MLS. Be kind, take a second and help them out, because they're just trying to get that report as accurate as they can today, because today is so different than from yesterday. Okay, for our very last question, I saved the best for last because it is one of the toughest questions that all of us in our industry are facing today. And that is the fact that we have a lot of people that we're trying to take really, really good care of. But our industry is not perfect. And we know that our members are not perfect. And we've had some issues with taking care of people. I'm really, really proud of our Code of Ethics team. I know we made a really good decision in helping to raise the bar with 10.5 in our Code of Ethics. And that is that we're realtors and we're realtors all of the time. It is in the news, and it is out in that public arena where it is being brought to light where certain parts and certain facets of our industry, again, are not taking care of people. And in one of those situations, it was about an appraisal, it was about an appraisal that was being done, and that influence of What race is the constituent at the home? Do those pictures on the mantle make a difference to the market value of that appraisal? And are the appraisers, in some way, fashion, are they showing bias through that appraisal process? And I know this is a really tough question because I also know that in our industry, this is not the norm. There is no question this is not the norm. But when we have even one or two instances of this happening, I know that we all take this very seriously. So Frank, if I could ask you, because I know you have been working especially with a work group with the National Association of Realtors long before any of this news media came out, can you address what's happening in that sector of our industry and what it is that our members, our appraiser realtor members, are doing to help that?
Tracy, thanks for the question. And the Real Property Valuation Committee last year created a work group called Racial Discrimination in Real Estate Appraisal. And it was a broad-based group of NAR members, appraisers, non-appraisers, to discuss literature and also to discuss the allegations that have been made, both in congressional testimony and in the news media. Hopefully, the work group will be recreated in 2021. But in addition to that, it's important to realize, we're all human beings. However, appraisers, every single Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac appraisal form has a requirement. It says race and the racial composition of the neighborhood are not appraisal factors. Realtor appraisers subscribe to the NAR Code of Ethics, and they pay attention to what the Code of Ethics has to say about discrimination on the basis not only of legislative protected groups, but a number of protected groups that are not included in legislation. So realtor appraisers subscribe to a higher standard. In addition to that, NAR, Real Property Valuation Committee, has made a commitment for 2021 to be fully integrated into NAR's plan to ensure fair housing for all. And we are going to be working with states to help develop hopefully some type of model course on fair housing to be included in appraisers' continuing education. I'm sure that Michelle has got a bunch to say because I know that the Appraisal Standards Board, but appraisers recognize that our profession is not important. One other aspect I think that is important, and it has to do with NAR's initiatives, and that is we have to get more appraisers into the profession. And we need to diversify our ranks to make sure that the ranks of appraisers are more reflective of what the population of the United States is. NAR is interested in doing that, but also the Appraisal Foundation is interested in doing that. And as a representative of NAR on the Appraisal Foundation Board of Trustees, I'm part of the Diversity and Inclusion Committee at the Appraisal Foundation. And we are specifically working on attracting minorities to the appraisal profession.
I know, Michelle, I know you have some comments. Please, can you share what your perspective is on this issue?
Well, Tracy, thanks for bringing this up because open dialogue is always good. My parents and my grandparents always said that when a marriage fails, it's often due to a lack of communication. And I found that throughout life, that a lack of communication is what is the root of some of our major problems. So it's great to have the open dialogue, the open communication.
Okay.
I would like to make sure that everyone is aware that the Appraisal Standards Board has had standards and rules in place in the appraisal profession for 30 years that prohibit any type of bias or advocacy of any type. And what's important about this, I'd like to give some background. Congress gave authority to the Appraisal Foundation 30 years ago to write standards for qualifications that appraisers must adhere to nationally. So real estate appraisers nationwide must meet the Appraisal Foundation's qualifications and standards and undergo very extensive training and education. The foundation promulgates standards that specifically prohibit any type of bias. And here's what's important. There is an enforcement mechanism already in place for state regulators to pursue disciplinary cases against appraisers who are acting inappropriately or in violation of the already existing standards. There are very strict ethical obligations in USPAP, our Uniform Standards of Professional Appraisal Practice. And what I love about the appraisers who are also members of the Realtor family is we also adhere to the Code of Ethics. So there's dual ethical standards.
Well, thank you, Michelle, because that was going to be one of my questions is if a consumer felt like they were being prejudiced against, where would they go?
They're state enforcement agencies.
They're state enforcement agencies. I don't know that people even realize that they have an opportunity to do that. So not that there would be many opportunities, because like I said, I know that this industry is one that is getting kind of those accusations where in some cases, yes, it has happened, but in a lot of cases, I don't believe that it has. And so we just want to make sure that we're helping to take care of that. Thank you, both of you, Frank and Michelle, for being here today. Thank you for sharing so much insight about your specialty in our industry. Thank you for being members that are absolutely setting the bar high, and thank you for all that you both do. Thank you for joining us at this episode of Real Talk with Tracy. What I love is that our association is centered around taking care of people. It's so important, every aspect of what we do, including all of the stakeholders in our association. And as we look into the future, we know that things will be changing for us. So thank you again for joining me. And we can't look to the future, of course, without introducing Future Tracy. Hey, thanks for having me. It's great to be back. I am so excited about our next episode because it will be centered around our members. Hey, there's that pen. Fortunately, we lose that. Thanks again, everyone, for joining us.
For more information, or if you have questions or feedback, visit the website at tracykasperfornar.com.